My name is Jake Morrison, and for as long as I can remember, I've dreamed of owning my own farm. Not just any farm, but the perfect piece of land where I could build something meaningful with my own hand. After 12 years of working double shifts at the factory, living in a cramped apartment, and saving every spare dollar, that dream finally became reality. The Hendricks farm had been on the market for 8 months when I first saw it. 120 acres of rolling hills, a century-old farmhouse that needed work but had good bones, and a massive red barn that took my breath away. The moment I walked those fields, I knew this was home. The negotiations took 3 months. The elderly Mr. Hendricks was particular about who would take over his family's legacy, and I had to prove I wasn't some city developer looking to subdivide the land. I showed him my business plan, my savings account, and most importantly, my genuine love for the property. When the papers were finally signed last Tuesday, I sat in my truck outside the lawyer's office and cried. At 34 years old, I owned something real, something permanent. The deed in my hands represented more than property. It represented hope, future, and the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. I decided to keep the purchase secret from my family until I could surprise them properly. My parents had always worried about my unrealistic farming dreams, and my sister Emma had been particularly vocal about how I was wasting my life chasing fantasies. I wanted to show them the deed, walk them through the property, and prove that sometimes dreams do come true. I planned to drive out to the farm on Saturday morning, take photos, and then invite everyone over for Sunday dinner to share the news. It would be perfect. Chapter 2. The Unexpected Discovery. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear, perfect weather for my first official walk around my new property. I packed a thermos of coffee, my camera, and a notebook to jot down renovation ideas. The 40-minute drive from town felt like a pilgrimage to my new life. As I turned into the long gravel driveway, something immediately felt wrong. There were cars parked along the fence line, at least a dozen vehicles I didn't recognize. Music was drifting across the fields, and I could see people moving around near the barn. My first thought was that Mr. Hendricks had forgotten to mention some kind of community event. Maybe the local church used the barn for gatherings, or perhaps there was some kind of harvest celebration I didn't know about. I parked near the farmhouse and walked toward the barn, expecting to introduce myself as the new owner. What I found instead stopped me cold. The barn doors were wide open, and inside was a full-blown party. String lights had been hung from the rafters, tables were set up with food and drinks, and at least 50 people were dancing, laughing, and celebrating. A DJ had set up equipment in the corner, and someone had even brought in portable heaters to keep the space comfortable. But the most shocking sight was my sister Emma standing near the entrance, greeting guests like she owned the place. She was wearing a flowing sundress and had a huge smile on her face as she hugged people and directed them toward the refreshment tables. I stood frozen in the doorway, trying to process what I was seeing. This was my barn, my property, my dream, and somehow my sister was hosting what appeared to be a wedding reception or anniversary party without my knowledge or permission. Emma hadn't seen me yet, but I could hear her voice carrying over the music as she thanked people for coming to celebrate at the farm. Chapter 3. Confronting the Truth. I stood there for several minutes, watching my sister play hostess in my barn. The longer I observed, the more details I noticed that made my stomach churn. Someone had obviously spent considerable time and money decorating the space. Professional-grade lighting equipment hung from the beams, elegant table linens covered rented tables, and the whole setup looked like it had been planned for weeks. Emma was clearly in charge, directing caterers and coordinating with what appeared to be a wedding photographer. She moved through the crowd with the confidence of someone who belonged there, someone who had every right to be hosting an event in this space. I finally gathered the courage to approach her. As I walked through the crowd, several people smiled and nodded at me, assuming I was another guest. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was being welcomed as a visitor to my own property. "Emma!" I called out when I was close enough for her to hear me over the music. She turned around, and the expression on her face told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a coincidence. The shock in her eyes quickly transformed into something that looked like guilt, mixed with defiance. "Jake," she said, her voice barely audible over the celebration around us. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Emma, this is my property. I bought this farm. The real question is, what are you doing here?" The people nearest to us began to notice the tension in our conversation. The bride and groom, because it was clearly a wedding reception, looked over with concern, probably wondering why someone was causing a disturbance at their celebration. "We need to talk," Emma said quietly, grabbing my arm and trying to steer me away from the crowd. But not here, not now. Chapter 4. The Painful Revelation. Emma led me outside the barn, away from the celebration, but I could still hear the music and laughter that should have been filling me with joy on this day. Instead, every sound felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice barely controlled. Emma looked down at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. "Jake, I can explain everything. How long have you known I bought this farm?" I repeated, my patience wearing thin. "Since last Monday," she admitted quietly. "I work at the title company, remember? I saw the paperwork when it came through. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow." Emma had known for almost a week that I had purchased this property, and instead of congratulating me or respecting my ownership, she had used that inside information to plan and host an event on my land without my permission. "So you decided to throw a party in my barn?" I asked, incredulous. "It's not that simple," Emma said, finally looking up at me. "This is Sarah's wedding reception. She's my best friend, and she's been planning this for months. The original venue fell through last week, and she was devastated. When I saw that you had bought this place, I thought, you thought you'd just use my property without asking? I thought you wouldn't mind helping a friend in need," Emma said, her voice taking on a defensive tone. "It's not like you were using it this weekend." I stared at my sister, trying to understand how she could be so casual about violating my property rights and my trust. This wasn't just about the barn or the party. It was about respect, boundaries, and the fact that she had treated my dream like her personal resource. "Emma, this is my farm, my dream. You had no right to make decisions about how it's used without even talking to me." "I was going to tell you after the party," she said weakly. Chapter 5. Family Secrets Unveiled. As Emma and I stood outside the barn, the weight of her betrayal settling over me like a dark cloud, she dropped another bombshell that shattered what remained of my trust. "There's something else you need to know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom and Dad know about the party." "What do you mean they know?" "They're here, Jake. They're inside celebrating with everyone else." I felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. Not only had my sister used my property without permission, but my parents were actively participating in this violation of my trust. The family I had planned to surprise with my good news had instead conspired to treat my achievement as their personal convenience. "They know I bought the farm?" I asked, though I was beginning to suspect the answer. Emma nodded miserably. "I told them Tuesday night. I was excited for you, but then when Sarah's venue fell through, Mom suggested we could use your barn for the reception. She said it would be a nice way to break in the property." The casual way my family had discussed using my property without consulting me was almost more hurtful than the actual trespass. They had reduced my life's dream to a convenient party venue, making decisions about my land as if I were still a child who couldn't be trusted with important choices. "Where are they?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Dad's helping with the sound system and Mom's in the kitchen area coordinating with the caterers." I looked back at the barn, seeing it now not as a celebration, but as a crime scene. Every laugh, every toast, every moment of joy was happening on my property without my consent, orchestrated by the people who should have been the first to respect my boundary. "I need to see them," I said, starting to walk back toward the barn. "Jake, please," Emma called after me. "Don't make a scene. These people don't deserve to have their celebration ruined." Chapter 6. Confronting my parents. I found my father near the DJ setup, adjusting speakers with the confidence of someone who belonged there. When he saw me approaching, his face lit up with a smile that felt like salt in an open wound. "Jake, there you are," he said cheerfully. "Emma said you might stop by. Great party, isn't it? This barn is perfect for events like this." "Dad," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. Did Emma tell you that I own this property now? Of course she did, he replied, still smiling. Congratulations, son, though I have to say I'm surprised you didn't mention you were buying a place. We could have helped with the inspection, the negotiations. I wanted it to be a surprise, I said. I was planning to show you and Mom around tomorrow and share the news properly. My father's expression began to shift as he realized the implications of what I was saying. Oh, he said slowly. Oh, Jake, I didn't realize. Emma said you were okay with the party. Emma lied. I found my mother in what had been set up as a catering area, directing servers with the same authority she used to organize church potlucks. When she saw me, she rushed over with the same enthusiastic smile my father had worn. Jake, honey, isn't this wonderful? Sarah's reception is going beautifully and your barn is just perfect for it. You should be so proud of this place. Mom, I interrupted, I didn't give permission for this party. The smile faded from her face as the reality of the situation began to dawn on her. But Emma said, she told us you wanted to help Sarah. Emma never asked me. She saw the paperwork at her job and decided to use my property without my knowledge or consent. My mother looked stricken, glancing around at the celebration that was happening all around us. Jake, I'm so sorry. We assumed. You assumed wrong. Chapter 7. The Weight of Betrayal. Standing in my own barn, surrounded by strangers celebrating on my property without my permission, I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. The people who should have been my biggest supporters had instead become the architects of my deepest disappointment. My mother tried to take my arm, her face filled with regret. Jake, we can fix this. We can explain to everyone. We can... Fix what, Mom? The fact that my own family thought so little of my property rights that you planned a party without asking? The fact that Emma used her job to spy on my personal business? The fact that none of you thought I deserved to be consulted about how my own land is used? The music continued playing and guests continued dancing, oblivious to the family drama unfolding around them. I watched the bride and groom sharing their first dance as husband and wife, and despite my anger, I felt sorry for them. Their special day was built on a foundation of deception and stolen property. Son, my father said, joining our conversation, we made a mistake, a big mistake, but these people have already paid for catering. They've traveled from out of state. The photographer is here. Can we talk about this after the party? After the party? I repeated. Dad, this is my property. These people are trespassing and you're asking me to wait until it's convenient for everyone else before addressing it? Emma appeared at my side, her face pale with worry. Jake, please, I know I messed up, but Sarah doesn't deserve to have her wedding day ruined because of my mistake. I looked around at the celebration, the happy couple, the proud parents, the friends and family who had come together to celebrate love and new beginnings. Then I looked at my own family, who had taken my new beginning and turned it into their convenience. This isn't about Sarah, I said quietly. This is about trust, respect, and the fact that my own family treated my dream like their personal playground. Chapter 8. The Difficult Decision. I stood there in my barn, watching my family's faces as they realized the magnitude of their betrayal. The weight of the decision before me felt crushing. I could shut down the party, assert my property rights, and send everyone home, but that would destroy an innocent couple's wedding day. Or I could allow the celebration to continue and deal with the family issues later, essentially rewarding my family's deception. The bride, Sarah, approached our group with a concerned expression. She was beautiful in her white dress, glowing with happiness, and completely unaware that her reception was taking place on stolen ground. Is everything okay? She asked, looking between Emma and me. Emma, you look upset. Emma glanced at me desperately, silently pleading for me not to destroy her friend's special day. I realized that whatever decision I made would define not just this moment, but my relationships with my family for years to come. Sarah, I said carefully, I'm Jake, Emma's brother. Congratulations on your wedding. Thank you. Emma's told me so much about you. And thank you for letting us use your beautiful barn. When our original venue had that kitchen fire last week, we thought we'd have to cancel the reception entirely. My heart sank further. A kitchen fire. This wasn't just a case of wanting a nicer venue. This couple had faced a genuine emergency, and my sister had seen an opportunity to help by using my property without permission. "I'm glad we could help," I heard myself saying, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. Sarah beamed and hurried back to her guests, leaving me standing with my family in the middle of my own moral dilemma. "Thank you," Emma whispered, tears in her eyes. "Don't thank me yet," I replied. "We're going to have a very long conversation after these people leave." My father nodded solemnly. "We understand, son, and we'll make this right." But I wondered if some things could ever really be made right again. Chapter 9. Watching from the sideline. I spent the rest of the afternoon as a stranger at my own property, watching other people celebrate in the space I had dreamed of calling home. Every laugh, every toast, every moment of joy felt bittersweet. This should have been my day of triumph, my moment of showing off my achievement to my family. Instead, I was relegated to the role of unwilling host to a party I never authorized. My mother tried several times to engage me in conversation, pointing out improvements that could be made to the barn, discussing the potential for hosting events, suggesting ways the property could generate income. Each comment felt like another small betrayal, as if she was already planning how to use my land for future unauthorized activities. "The acoustics in here are wonderful," she said at one point. "You could really build a business around hosting weddings and receptions." "Mom," I said quietly, "I didn't buy this farm to run an event venue. I bought it to live on, to farm, to build a life." "Of course, honey. I just meant as a side business." I walked away before she could finish the sentence. The fact that my family still didn't understand why I was upset made the betrayal even deeper. Emma spent the afternoon avoiding me, throwing herself into hostess duties with an intensity that suggested she was trying to prove how necessary her unauthorized party planning had been. She coordinated with vendors, managed the timeline, and ensured everything ran smoothly, all while shooting guilty glances in my direction. My father, to his credit, seemed to genuinely understand the gravity of what had happened. He approached me during a quiet moment and said simply, "I'm sorry, Jake. We were wrong." It was the first real acknowledgement of wrongdoing I had heard from any of them, and it meant more than he probably realized. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the barn doors, I found myself imagining what this space could become under different circumstances. Chapter 10. The party ends. As the reception wound down and guests began to leave, I helped with the cleanup despite my anger. These people had been innocent victims of my family's deception, and I couldn't bring myself to make their departure difficult. The bride and groom thanked me repeatedly for sharing my beautiful barn, and each expression of gratitude felt like another weight on my chest. The vendors worked efficiently to pack up their equipment, and I was amazed at how quickly the barn was transformed back to its original state. Within 2 hours, there was barely any evidence that a party had taken place. The string lights came down, the tables were folded and loaded into trucks, and the sound system was packed away. Emma supervised the cleanup with the same attention to detail she had brought to the party planning. I had to admit, grudgingly, that she had done an excellent job organizing everything. Under different circumstances, I might have been impressed by her event management skills. "Jake," she said as the last vendor drove away, "can we talk now?" My parents joined us in the empty barn, the four of us standing in the space that had been filled with celebration just hours before. The silence felt heavy with unspoken words and unresolved hurt. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry," Emma began. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you." "But you did hurt me," I replied. "You violated my trust, my property rights, and my dreams." "I know," she said, tears starting to flow. "I was so focused on helping Sarah that I didn't think about how this would affect you. When I saw the paperwork and realized you had bought this place, my first thought was how perfect it would be for her reception. I should have called you immediately." My father stepped forward. "Son, we all made mistakes here. Emma should have asked your permission, and we should have questioned her when she said you were okay with the party. But why didn't you?" I asked. "Why didn't any of you think to call me and confirm?" Chapter 11. Understanding the deeper issues. My mother's answer to my question revealed deeper family dynamics that I hadn't fully recognized before. "Honestly, Jake," she said hesitantly, We've been so worried about your farming dreams that when Emma said you were finally ready to use the property for something practical, we were relieved." "Practical?" I repeated, the word hitting me like a slap. "We've watched you struggle financially for years, saving every penny for this dream," my father added. "When Emma mentioned that you might be open to hosting events, it seemed like a sign that you were thinking realistically about how to make the farm profitable." I stared at my parents, finally understanding the root of the problem. They had never truly believed in my farming dreams. To them, my purchase of this property was just another impractical decision that needed to be managed and redirected towards something more sensible. "You think I'm going to fail," I said quietly. "We think farming is incredibly difficult," my mother said carefully. "We want you to succeed, but we also want you to have backup plans." Emma wiped her eyes and spoke up. "Jake, I've watched you work yourself to death for this dream. When I saw an opportunity to help you make some money from the property right away, I thought I was doing something good. By lying to me, by handling the details so you wouldn't have to worry about them," she said. "I know how that sounds now, but at the time it felt like I was taking care of you." I walked to the barn doors and looked out at the fields that were now mine. The evening light was fading, and the landscape looked peaceful and full of promise. This was what I had worked for, what I had sacrificed for, what I had dreamed of for years. "None of you understand," I said, still looking out at the land. "This isn't about money or practicality or backup plans. This is about building something meaningful with my own hand." Chapter 12. Setting Boundaries. I turned back to face my family, and for the first time since discovering the party, I felt clear about what needed to happen next. "Here's what's going to change," I said, my voice steady and calm. "First, Emma, you're going to resign from any involvement in my financial affairs. No more checking on my paperwork, no more monitoring my purchases, no more using your job to spy on my business." Emma nodded, looking ashamed. "I understand." "Second, Mom and Dad, you need to accept that this is my property and my decision. I didn't ask for your input on buying it, and I won't be asking for your approval of how I use it. If you can't respect that, then you're not welcome here." My parents exchanged glances, and I could see them struggling with the idea of their adult son setting such firm boundaries. "Third," I continued, "if any of you ever want to use this property for anything, and I mean anything, you ask me first. You don't assume, you don't plan around me, and you don't make decisions about my land without my explicit permission." "That's fair," my father said quietly. "And finally," I said, looking directly at Emma, "you're going to pay me for today. The rental value of this barn, the wear and tear on the property, the violation of my rights. You're going to compensate me fairly." Emma's eyes widened. "Jake, I don't have that kind of money." "Then you'll work it off. You can help me with farm improvements, maintenance, whatever needs doing. But you're going to make this right through your actions, not just your apologies." My mother started to protest. "Jake, don't you think you're being a little harsh? Emma was trying to help a friend." "Mom," I interrupted, "Emma was trying to help a friend by stealing from me. The fact that her intentions were good doesn't change what she did." The barn fell silent as my family absorbed my conditions. I could see them processing the reality that their relationship with me had fundamentally changed, that I was no longer the accommodating younger brother and son who could be managed and directed. Chapter 13. A New Beginning. 3 months have passed since that devastating day when I discovered my family's betrayal in my own barn. The farm has become everything I dreamed it would be, and more. I've planted my first crops, renovated the farmhouse, and created the life I always envisioned for myself on this beautiful land. Emma has kept her word about making amends. Every weekend, she drives out to help with whatever projects I have planned. We've rebuilt fences, painted the barn, and cleared overgrown areas together. The physical work has been good for both of us. It's given her a way to demonstrate her remorse through action, and it's given me a chance to see that she's genuinely committed to repairing our relationship. My parents have been slower to adjust to the new boundaries, but they're learning. They visit occasionally, always calling first to ask permission, and they've stopped offering unsolicited advice about how I should run my farm. Last month, my father even complimented my vegetable garden without suggesting ways to monetize it. The most surprising development has been my relationship with Sarah, the bride whose reception inadvertently exposed my family's betrayal. She and her husband have become friends, and they've referred several other couples to me for legitimate, properly contracted barn rentals. It turns out Emma was right about one thing. The barn is perfect for events, and I've discovered that hosting a few carefully selected celebrations each year provides nice supplemental income without compromising my farming goals. But the most important change has been within myself. Standing up to my family that day, setting clear boundaries, and demanding respect for my choices has transformed how I see myself and how others see me. I'm no longer the dreamy younger brother whose plans need to be managed by more practical family members. I'm a successful farmer and business owner who makes his own decisions about his own property. The farm of my dreams is no longer just a dream. It's my reality, built on a foundation of hard work, determination, and the painful but necessary lesson that sometimes the people we love most are the ones who need the clearest boundaries. Looking back, I'm almost grateful for that shocking discovery in my barn. It forced conversations that needed to happen, established respect that should have existed all along, and ultimately strengthened my relationships with my family by putting them on honest ground. Today, when I walk through my fields or sit on my porch watching the sunset over land that belongs to me, I feel a peace and satisfaction that goes beyond anything I imagined. This farm isn't just my home. It's proof that dreams can come true, even when the path to achieving them includes unexpected detours through family drama and betrayal. Thank you for listening to my story about turning my biggest dream into reality, even when it meant confronting some painful truths about family loyalty and respect. Sometimes the most important victories require us to stand up for ourselves, even with the people we love most. I'd love to hear from listeners around the world. Please let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and whether you've ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories about following your dreams, overcoming obstacles, and building the life you've always wanted.